Okay, there we go. I think we're resumed recording now. Yeah, recording to the cloud. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's take a look at um, your assignment that's going to carry over into next week. I think I'm going to make it due. Well, this will be due next week. And then the assignment, like what we're going to do the following week, which is modeling the interior, is going to be due probably the 4th, like because we have Thanksgiving week, so it'll be over 2 weeks. And then from the when we meet on the 4th, it'll just be a final project that'll take you into, the 13th, I think, which is the last day of class. Or not the 13th, but so there is no like meeting because you'll probably get an email about a meeting time to meet for a final. There's nothing like that. All right, so let's take a look at what you're going to do. So essentially, let me bring up my game window here. For your assignment for till next week is this. So you'll have the character walking around, and then they'll hit this door and they'll enter a kitchen. And what you're going to do is you're going to script that trigger box as well as the modeling of this room. And I'm going to take you through that whole process right now, on how to do all of that. And so let's just sort of run through the process of how to set all this stuff up. So the first thing is we have our scene here, which is our environment with our, these, you don't have to do these pop machines. Those were like bonus videos that I put in there. But what we need is a door trigger. And that's what this thing is here. And this door trigger is as we enter, our robot character walks into this door trigger, it will be used with code to spawn us into the next level. So how do we make a door trigger? Well, inside of our hierarchy here, which at this point we're like super comfortable with, like you guys have all been doing really beautiful models and stuff. We're going to right click and we're going to create an empty game object. And we're just going to position that in front of the door, the center in front of the door here. And I'm going to rename this game object here door, or I should name it level trigger, because what it's going to do is it's going to be responsible for triggering our level. Now, this empty game object really is just a placeholder. So what I generally do is I'll add a like symbol, and that way if I click off of it, I can see that's where my level trigger is. The other thing I want to do for my level trigger is I want to have a box collider that when I enter it or I hit it, um it'll trigger the actual like event that'll happen. So how do you create a box collider that when you enter that box collider, it triggers an event? Well, you just type in, you go to add component, you type box, and this is a collision box. And there's a bunch of different types at this point. Like we've created a few others for all these other objects, but this is just an empty box collision that's on top of this trigger. And then I generally try to make it the size of the door. So I'm going to click this on, and I'm going to bring this down just kind of almost to the floor and a little bit wider. So something like this. And the way I test this is I generally just press play and I see if I walk up to it, will I hit it? So you can see I am hitting it and I try to go in this way and it's like this invisible collision wall. And they do this a lot in games and films anyway, mostly games to stop things from moving. In film, it's to stop physics objects. Now, how do I get it where I can enter within this and trigger? Well, on the box collider itself, there's a little toggle here called is trigger. And this will allow me to enter into that door, which will bring me all the way up to the door there. And so I can walk right up to the door. And it's useful because in code, what we use these for is to trigger events, like a gun trigger, but you walk into it and it triggers something. So how do we do that in code? Well, in the script here, I'm just going to create a new C# script by right-clicking, creating a C# script. And I'm going to call this level trig 02. And I'm not going to open this one up. I'm going to open up this other level trigger script here. But what you would normally do is with this level trigger, this empty one that we created here, I'm just going to drag it and drop it on here, this level trig 02, so you can see it. Now, actually, what I'll do is you know what? I will open it up. I'm just going to copy and paste the code from level trigger here so that you can see it. So I'm going to grab the body of this code in here, and I'm just going to replace this in here just so that you guys can see it. And let me go ahead and add using think I could just duplicate this and do dot scene management. Now, this isn't a programming class, but I'm going to explain to you how this code works, just to kind of give you an idea, just sort of like just a little bit of how the coding works. And this might be the thing that most people struggle with is a little bit of this, but all it is inside of Unity, you have these really, they're just text documents, and that's all this is. So when we created a C# class, you're just creating a text file like Microsoft Word or anything else. And inside of this, we can what all pro computer programming is you're just creating a series of commands that tell a computer what to do, or in our case, to tell a game what to do. And so the very first thing you'll see here is this public class. All this is this is the name of our script. Now, this thing that I added up here is these are all libraries, and they're libraries of code. And one of the libraries of code is called scene management. Again, a lot of this is going to be word salad, but some of it will sink in, some won't. But by and large, it's just to kind of get you familiar with what the coding is. So what this library of scene management has is it has stuff like this line here, this little function called load scene. And that's really, this line here is what the entire thing that we use this library for, is to bring in this one line here. And I'll get into what this line says. All right, so this says this very first line of code is a variable, right? And it's called level to load. And what it can do is hold a string. Now, when you think of variables, it's just a cup or a temporary storage place. So this line is a variable, is just creating a variable. That's what this line of code does. And let's just go chunk by chunk. So you can make certain variables private. So I'm going to hit Control S to save this, and I'm going to go to my scene, and I'm going to select this level trigger here. Actually, let me just do a side by side so you guys can see this in real time. And then let's bring our code up like that. Okay. So we created a variable that can hold string values, which means it can hold words, it can hold sentences, it can hold letters. But if I attach this script here, I can't access it because it's marked private. If I want to be able to access this value here inside of my editor, I use a special command called serialized field. Now, when I hit Control S here and I go inside of here, you can see that it exposes that variable called level to load. Now, why am I doing this? Well, what I want to do is I want to be able to put in a name for the level I would like to load. So I'm going to go in here, or I'm going to go into my scenes folder here, and I'm going to make a new level. And let's see, create scene. And I'm going to call this scene level 02. And I'm going to hit Control A and copy it. I named this other one L2. You're welcome to take that. It's just, I've already done this. I've already used it. So here's level 02. And what I'm going to do is select this level trigger, and I'm just going to paste this in there, level 02. Now, what I do next is there's a function made by Unity, and it says private void on trigger enter. And actually, there's another thing I want you to check. So before we continue on, actually, inside of Unity Hub, inside your installs, whatever version of Unity you're using, you want to double check, because this is the first coding assignment that we've done, that when you click on this little asterisk here and you go to add module, you want to make sure that you don't have a blue check mark next to Microsoft Visual Studio Community 2022. And then you're going to hit, if you do have that, it's going to ask you to install it. Go ahead and hit install, and that'll install that in your computer. No, I'm pretty sure that this part with the code, even though it's just a small bit of code, it's probably going to give you guys some trouble. So please, like, set up time to meet with me, and we'll totally knock it out. This is really the only code you're going to be writing the rest of the semester, is just this less than 20 lines of code. All right. So this is a pre-made function inside of Unity, and it's called onTriggerEnter. And what it does is it just checks whatever this script is attached to, which is this guy. It just checks if we entered that trigger. And we did. We have this armature robot that walks in there. If we enter it, what do we want to do? Well, the first thing is we have this statement, which is just a question. It's called an if statement. And it's saying if the other object, and that's what this little chunk of code here is doing. It's checking anything that enters in there. if the other object dot compare tag it has player on it. Well, what does that mean? If we click our player armature here, but it's the way that they set this up because we borrowed this, they already have something called a tag here, and it's assigned player. So this is already set up for us. So what we're checking is if the other object has that tag player, which means we're looking for this player armature. This is one of the ways inside of game engines or inside of Unity where they check or how they can give things specific names to interact with. So what this is doing is if other object that is called player, we're going to load the specified level. So the specified level is we go to scene manager up here, dot load scene level to load. And what it's doing is it's saying what we're going to do is if I walk in here, if this character walks in and they're called player, we're going to load a level. Which what level are we loading? Well, that's what the string value is. And so here we have level 02. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to save my scene. And let's go and walk into that and see if it loads level 02. So I'm going to go ahead and press play here. And here's my robot. And I walk in there and it gives me an error. And the reason it's giving me this error is because it's saying, hey, level 02 could not be loaded because it's not added to your build settings. Go to File, Build Settings. So I'm going to go to File here and I'm going to go to Build Settings here. I'm going to bring this up, and sure enough, level 02 is not in there. So I'm just saying because you're probably going to experience this. I know you're getting in a little late, Ari. Thanks for joining. I totally had you as an excused absence, so that's really awesome. I'm recording the lecture, so and again, feel free to meet with me. This little bit of code here might be a little bit easier for you, Ari, because you've programmed 6 games in Games Studio. So, but still, if you need help. So anyway, back to this. So if I go to level 02 here and I drag it in here, now it knows to go to the scene manager. That's what this is. See, it's the scenes to build. And if I close that and I press play now, this little robot, when I walk into that door, it'll now load this blank scene. So let's go ahead and look at what that scene is. What you want to do is I'm actually going to select player armature and player follow camera, and I'm going to select main camera here, and I'm going to hit Control C to copy it. Or you can right click and just do copy on Mac, or Command C, I think, to Mac. And I'm going to go into level 2, which is this guy right here. So let's go ahead and hit save. And I'm going to right click and I'm just going to paste them in there. So what this does is this gives me the starting point of my player armature, my main camera, and my follow camera character. Now, what we want to do is we're moving into the stage where we're talking about interior design, modeling interiors, and modeling rooms. What you're going to be doing is a little bit of setup, which is typing this code. And if you're completely stuck, I'll just email you the code because this isn't really a coding class. It's a level design class. But I want you to at least attempt this. And what I want to do is I'm going to right click in here and I'm going to start setting the groundwork to model my kitchen or whatever. So I'm going to go to 3D object and I'm just going to create a plane. And for this, I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. So I don't need that code anymore. I'm going to do 5 by 5 by 5. And I'm going to have to tweak this because my image remember early on at the very beginning of the semester, we have this reference folder. And inside of this, we grab this reference images. If you've forgotten where that's at, let me go ahead and open up Microsoft Edge. And we went to houseplans.com just kind of as a and then inside of here we saved off like a bunch of these images. I don't know if you guys remember that. So this is just the interior of one of those images. So I'm going to grab this first floor image, which is this right here, and I'm just going to drop it on that plane. And what I'd like to do is select it and hit R and scale that up a little bit. And then I could pick a room, right? So what we're doing at this point is when we walk into that house and we hit that trigger, it's going to load up this room. So let's go ahead on the y-axis and change it to 180 degrees. And let's make sure that this is zeroed out. So I'm going to hit reset so it's underneath his feet. And let's also select our player armature here and let's reset him. And now I'm going to select this ground plane one more time and do 5, 5, 5. All right, and then I'm going to hit R to scale this up a little bit. And then I'll do y-axis 180. There we go. Now we're inside of here. You guys can pick any room that you want. I would suggest just do exactly what I'm doing because we only have like 3 weeks left of class. So what do we want to model? Well, what I'm thinking is we'll make our character go into the kitchen. Now I'm gonna edit this a little bit because this kitchen is very small. And if I select my player armature here and I move him into the kitchen, this doesn't make for a very interesting scene if it's only like that big. He's gonna be very cramped walking through this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna utilize this section here like that, and I'm gonna make that the kitchen. And so what's the first thing you do during interior design? When they were making the film King Kong and they were modeling the city that Kong's running down for the 1930s, before they added any of their own interesting changes or whatever, they went and did a scan, like an entire like imagery, pictures, scans of current day New York. And then they looked for old reference of New York from the time period like of the 1920s when the King Kong film was there. So they modeled the city verbatim, and then they went in later and they tweaked it. But the first step in the process, like we've talked about before, is just gray boxing. So what I'm going to do is I notice I'm going to put a wall across here. So I'm just sort of planning this out. And I have two doorways that I'm going to block off. So let's go to Tools, Pro Builder window, Pro Builder window. And I'm actually going to hit Control S to save this in case it crashes. I'm going to go to New Shape. And what I want to do now is I want to start adding some doors. So here's a door here. And I'm just going to drag this out, make sure it's the same width, and drag it up. And what I want to do is I want to get this doorway wide enough. So I'm going to do here, this first slot, I'm going to make it a little bit higher, and this door a little wide enough where this guy can fit through it. So let's go ahead and press play. And I'm just going to double check that my character can run through this. Perfect. It looks like for some reason, let's see, my player follow camera, it's following the camera route, which is this guy. Oh, let me delete this main camera, and that should now follow him. Sorry, I had two main cameras in the scene. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit escape, uncheck play here. I'm going to go ahead and select this doorway, and I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate it, and then I'm just going to position it here. Now, what I want to do is I want to construct one seamless room with just two entrances, which is here and here. So I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to select both of these. And inside of my Pro Builder window here, I'm going to do Merge Objects. And now both doorways, if I click on one, they're both connected. Now, the benefit behind this is when I go to model this, I can weld these together. And I'm going to show you that right now. So I'm going to select both of the edges here. So I'm just going to highlight across. Make sure that you have keep select hidden on. And all I'm going to do is drag a marquee across those two edges. I'm going to hold shift rather. Yeah. Control. Let's just do it this way. Less annoying. I'll just click on each one of these. Shift, shift, and shift. So now I have those faces. And I'm going to hold shift down and just move that out. And what shift does is it extrudes that edge. So I'm going to select these two edges. I'm going to hold shift again, bring this over this way. Then I'm going to select these two edges here, hold shift and extrude this across. And I'm just forming the walls now. Something like this. Select this edge and this one and bring it to the edge here. Now this edge here and this one here, and I'm going to hold shift and just kind of bring those a little bit closer. Now what I'm going to do is instead of like trying to match it up perfectly, I'm going to weld those together. So I'll select these two bottom verts. And then over here, I have this collapse vertice. I'm going to collapse those together. Select these two, collapse verts. And I got to be careful not to collapse the two front ones. So let's hit F to focus. Collapse verts. And this just kind of brings them together. And that's how you construct like there's one wall there. Now, what I want to do, like I said before, is I'm going to do the same thing here. And then what I actually want to do is just kind of bring all of these. I'm going to go to vertex mode. It makes it a little bit easier. And I'm going to make a really wide opening to this screen door or something. I'm going to go back to edge mode. Bring this over. Hold shift. And just line this up. Now this seems pretty easy, but it can be kind of not like, oh, actually, you know what? I want to end this wall here. So what I might do is I'll select these two. Well, I got to move this over a little bit. So let's move this over. Actually, I might just delete this face. Oops. The way you delete faces is you hit backspace. Okay, let's select these and then hold shift and then just bring these all the way over this way. And then just connect it this way. And then the same thing as before. Hit F to focus on that little edge there so I can see. I wish there's like a redo button, redo last action, where I can just hit the hotkey for this. You guys get the idea. I'm not going to do that back part to bore you. So here's our room. So what's some of the last things I want you to do? So now we have the walls gray boxed. All you're going to do next is you're going to model, and I'll do this with you, is you're going to model the cabinets inside of this room. Now, you don't really apply we're just gray boxing it out according to the blueprints. We're not actually doing any real design work just yet. So what we have here is you can see a kitchen sink. It's kind of a little pixelated. Let me actually see if I can select my reference image and make it a little bit stronger. Like this, like I'm wondering what the size of it. It says 2048. What if I go 4096? It really didn't do anything to make it sharper. It's just a grainy image. All right, so how do I make cabinets? Well, I'm going to go to new shape here, and I'm going to select a cube, and all I'm doing is gray boxing at this point. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to stop about where the sink is, and I'm going to move it up. And then wherever the sink is here, I'm going to select that face, hold shift, and I'm going to extrude out like a representation of where that sink is. And I'm going to extrude that out one more time and go up to the wall. And there's those cabinets that represent this sink. Now for the sink, I'm just going to hit R and hold shift. I'm going to extrude it in, hit W, hold shift, and there's our sink. What represents our sink. And on the wall back here, I'm just going to go to a new shape here. And I have my phone connected to my headphone. Sorry about that. So inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I have my cube selected. And I'm going to drag out a couple cabinets. Maybe they're just segmented cabinets like this, out a little bit like that. And then another one here. You know what? An easier way to do this is just to hit Control D to duplicate this and just shift them over to the wall like that. Then I'm going to go to face mode and just make some space here, like that. Now, to make life easier, I'm just going to select both of these, or maybe this guy first and hit Control D. Actually, let me just do both of them. Control D, bring them over this way, hit F to focus. And even though the modeling is easy, it's still like you're getting back into all this modeling stuff, which can get frustrating. So let's kind of move these two down. And let's create the countertops that the oven sits next to. So this actually kind of goes off like this a little bit. And let's move both of these off out of the ground a little bit more. And same thing here. I'm going to kind of select both of those, go to face mode. Actually, just shrink these down a little bit because I want to make room for a refrigerator. And then I'm going to put a cube that represents the stove. And then another cube that represents the fridge. And then to make like some decorative countertops, I'm going to hit Control D, move these up, hit R, and then just kind of extrude them forward a little bit. And then lastly, For the doors, I'm going to go ahead and go to new shape and then make a cube, just a thin cube out here, and then move that in. The camera's going to snap because it's got collision on it. I'm going to hit W and Control D again to duplicate that, and then just block off this room. Now, we haven't done any narrative like, did a murder happen to this kitchen? Did anything cool happen? We haven't done anything like that. Right now, we're just getting representational gray boxes, like little boxes that represent this room. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control S on this. And let's go ahead and move this up and let's press play so we could see how this feels when we walk around it. It looks pretty good. That's going to be your assignment for the week, is what I just showed you. And if we go really quickly back to the city environment, just to kind of demo this, I'm going to press play. You have a character running around. When I go to this door, it triggers, and now I'm in this room. Now notice that this room is really dark. The fix for that is you go to Window, Rendering, Lighting, and then you have to hit Generate Lighting here. Oh, we have to be in that other room, sorry, when we hit Generate Lighting. Let me let that hit. Let me hit Escape here, and then I'm going to go into Level 02, hit Save that, hit Generate Lighting. That should be quick because there's not much going on here. Now we'll go back to the city environment. Let's save that, press play. Now when we go inside of here, you can see I'm in the room. It's lit nicely. What I might do too is like, if you want the scene to not be so jarring when you're looking at it, what I tend to do is select my directional light and I turn it to a gray. Something like this, 50% gray, maybe a little less. And then it feels a little bit nicer, more natural, like a midday thing. And then here, what I'll do is I'll go to Window, Rendering, Lighting, Generate Lighting. And that's it. That's your assignment for next week. And then what we'll do the following week is we'll start talking about going from gray boxing to advanced modeling, where we'll maybe put, like a kitchen like a counter here instead of we'll have like a separate dining room. This is just a smaller kitchen. And then we'll start modeling out cabinets, things like that. All right. Any comments or questions about this or the assignment? Like what's going to be due moving forward? Like on this. Okay, let me stop the recording so it can go to the cloud sooner.